Hello and welcome to the White House Church podcast. My name is Luke Franson, here with my brother in Christ,
Colin Fosnaw.
And today we're doing episode 3.
Yes.
Red flags in the church. This actually comes from probably one of the more common questions or conversations that we have with interested house church people. In addition to our own thought process working with other house churches, one, what are we looking out for when we when we talk about partnering in ministry with other house churches, or doing things with them, or helping them, or just doing the whole house church network thing. But also, one of the questions that we get is like, okay, so I don't want to move to Indianapolis and join your thing.
But how do I figure out how I'm not getting into a bad situation?
Yeah, how do I know if this is a good church?
Yeah.
How do I know if this is a healthy church? Because one of the criticisms that I have against the institutionalized church is the focus on numbers. And that numbers mean it's a healthy, growing church, and that's really not true. You can get people to really join in on some horrific things
pretty quickly
if you market it well.
With some simple manipulation.
Yeah. So numbers aren't really a sign of a good, healthy church. What are some signs of bad churches? And then on the converse, what is the sort of healthy...
examples that we have are things that we can do to avoid some of the bad flags.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So first, I would say, if you don't want to move to Indianapolis and join our thing, I would pray about that, because maybe God would have
Don't
you.
rule it out.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you. Just be led by the Lord, be led by love and prayer and a mission. And if you're thinking, maybe I shouldn't do something drastic with my life, or maybe you're saying, God wouldn't want me to make a big change in my life.
Have you prayed about it yet?
Yeah, have you thought about that? Are you sure? Anyway, that's just asking questions. That's what we do here on White House Church Podcast, because the name of the podcast is a question in and of itself.
White House Church.
We're probably going to answer it, but maybe not.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk red flags.
So what we did today is we, as a modern millennial, what is it?
Millennial Gen Z.
Gen Z.
I'm on the millennial Gen Z line. You're Gen Z.
I'm Gen Z. On that millennial Gen Z line, we did the classic.
I identify as a millennial. I said
you don't
that.
want any part of the Gen Z.
I said that, and my wife looked at me and she goes, "That's the most Gen Z thing I think you've ever said."
Accurate.
It's just really funny. I've been waiting to put that joke in this episode ever since we did this. But go ahead. We did a millennial thing.
We did. We made a tier list. For those of you who don't know what a tier list is, it's a ranking system, essentially.
Find a millennial and ask them about a tier list.
Yep. Starts with an S, goes down A, B, C, D, skip E, straight to F.
Yeah, so in the early 2000s, video games used to rank your performance or time on any certain level. I think this started with the Sonic games, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not a video game historian. But they would rank your performance like A, B, C. But if you did really well,
S tier.
You'd get S tier. Or the SSX3 was the game that I know that
I love
you would
that
get
game.
Gold, silver, bronze. But if you did really well, you get platinum. Platinum. So platinum is that S tier. It's like wow, you beat the play testers for the game. Like you're like good.
Yep.
And so when we're talking about S tier red flags, what do you mean by that?
Ones that when you immediately see, you know that you should probably just take a step back and walk away from.
Yeah, you just turn around and you walk out of the room.
Want nothing to do with.
Nothing to do with, to the point where maybe reconciliation is possible, but you might just call out this false gospel, this false teaching, and you'd probably do more honor to God, and you would represent the Father better if you just called it out, walked away, and had nothing to do with them, just split.
Rather than trying to work inside of it or be a part of it or anything.
Or even have a lengthy conversation about it.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah, so these are S tier. Like I'm not saying don't say anything, but I'm saying if you see this, don't commit to anything.
Yeah. What are some of those S tier ones that you have on your list?
So I was actually kind of joking about some of this.
Yeah.
But I was thinking blood oaths, living sacrifices, claiming that you're the second coming. Like there's like big things like that. right, you're laughing about it, but like I got to thinking about it, and there are actually some colors to this I want to add.
Okay.
So living sacrifice, that's cool, but I also want to say if somebody says that you have to do more than trust Jesus and give your life to Jesus to have that propitiation for your sin, that's not Christian.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I just I want to throw that out there right now. And so like the living sacrifice thing, like it's kind of a joke because ancient religions had a lot of human sacrifices and animal sacrifices, and that was just part of it. And we don't really see that anymore in the modern era. Maybe that's a cultural thing. Maybe that's just.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have religious groups and organizations that are pushing this idea of sacrifice, or a sort of extra propitiation for your sin. If somebody says that the blood of Christ is not enough to cover your sin, that's my first red flag that they're doctrinally not Christian.
What are one of the more recent ones that you've seen that done that?
You're gonna make me do it. Okay, so
My bad.
That's okay. The first example that comes to mind is actually it has to do with the doctrine of purgatory.
I was okay.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie to you.
You thought you were gonna push me there.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I had the next question because I was wondering if there was a more obvious one, but I was gonna ask: are indulgences one of these things?
Are indulgences an extra level
yes,
of propitiation?
That was my question.
I view them as such. I mean, I honestly, I really do. This is just me. Like I can talk. I think there are a lot of faithful Catholics that are doing their best with what they have in front of them, but I think indulgences are an extra level of propitiation that is supposed to pay for your sin when the blood of Christ should have been enough.
Reduce your time in purgatory. Yeah.
Like that's the idea.
Yeah.
When you pay indulgences, you're reducing your time in purgatory, and that's been Catholic doctrine
for a long time.
And that's still Catholic doctrine as far as I'm aware. Like maybe that's changed with Pope Francis, but as far as I'm aware, it's one of those things that they keep on the DL.
From the last time I checked,
yeah. Slang for the down low. They don't talk about it.
Okay.
So it's like as soon as they start saying you have to do more to receive salvation, like that's when they're saying they're sort of decreasing the deity and sacrifice of Christ.
And there's going to have to be something else for you to earn that or have that.
So like that's doctrinally a huge red flag to me. But I'm Christian. If you're not Christian, that's really not much of a problem. It's just doctrinal differences, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
And so like that's some of these red flags are just for any sort of spiritual organization, whether you're like an institutionalized church or like a wellness cult. Because now those are everywhere.
You run into them with your job, right?
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you. I feel like I talked to so many people and they're telling me that like, oh, this hurts and that hurts and this doctor said that, but I don't know how much I believe that. And like they tell me that about like a doctor that I know, and I talk to on a daily basis. Yeah,
the misinformation is just like so.
And they're telling me you don't believe him. I'm like, okay, why don't you believe Doctor
XYZ?
XYZ because. Well, in one of my groups, we talk about.
Got it. All right.
Okay, what kind of supplements are you taking? What are they selling you on? And these cults, like they promise. I do use the word cult because there is there's a control, manipulation, a singular source of truth, fear mongering, love bombing, like all these sort of red flags of cults.
In a community of just health people.
Yeah, and literally in a community of holistic practitioners is usually the language that they'll use to smoke and mirrors their way into the health scene.
Gotcha.
So they'll say, you have to go to one of our weekend clinics if you want to be an instructor in our particular version of yoga. Yeah, is honestly the most common one because yoga does have a lot of meditation roots.
Okay.
So like you go to these weekend courses and it's $800 and you get to practice with a special yoga instructor who will make it super special and then heal your bodily trauma.
Yeah. But does it really do that much of a difference? No. If you just did some stretching?
It's all placebo.
Okay.
That's something I'm really confident in pushing back against and I'll alienate patients.
Pretty quickly with that?
Yeah. I try not to, but I only got so much time.
Yeah, and you want to make the most of it.
Yeah. And Like as a healthcare practitioner, like you need to stand up for the things that you know, so that patients are receiving consistent messaging from healthcare staff.
Yeah.
Like if every healthcare practitioner, I use smoking as my common example for this. Like you don't have to get super preachy about it, but you can just say it's recommended that you stop smoking,
Mm-hmm.
or this is going to be harder for you to heal because you need to stop smoking.
Yeah.
That's known. And if they're receiving that consistent messaging, I'm playing my part in the team in the healthcare setting.
Got it.
And so, if I do get that healthcare or that wellness cult,
Yeah.
I say something. I'm like, this is really pseudoscientific. Like, they're not doctors. They're not healthcare professionals.
Don't mess with this.
Yeah. And so they might hear that from me. They might hear that from their PCP. They might hear that from somebody else. And then after 10 times of hearing it, maybe it'll get through.
Yeah.
That's
hopefully what will happen.
That's the hope. That's the hope. I don't know. And what else can you do?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one.
That's one.
And so when I was thinking about blood oaths too, I got anti-Catholic earlier, and I'm about to get anti something else.
Okay.
I think a lot of times Christians actually make oaths, and we don't really. It's not a big deal.
Gotcha.
I don't really mean it.
In what ways do we make oaths?
Freemasonry is actually the most common example that comes to mind in the United States.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
Like during a Freemason initiation, or when they get to the next
they make
degree,
some promises.
Yeah, when they get to the next Masonic degree, they'll make an oath. And they don't really oaths.
They don't really fully get it.
Yeah, but you should make oaths.
Okay.
And so if you're joining a church and they ask for an oath, if they ask for a pledge, if they ask for some sort of test of your allegiance or declaration of your allegiance, that's a red flag. For any organization, if they're going to demand your allegiance blind
from the start without any kind of understanding of what's going on, that's a red flag.
That's a problem. That's a problem. All that, like, a lot of people look at our church and they're like, "Wow, you guys really trust your leaders a lot."
It's been earned.
Thank you. I mean, really, I don't take any of the trust that the church puts in me lightly.
And from not just my own perspective, mine included, but also others in this church, like, it took time. I mean, there was a lot. People either brought in old baggage of misunderstandings of people in authority or power, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
100%.
then also too, just like their own journey and understanding of what it means to have a good leader and somebody who cares for you,
yeah, absolutely,
who's looking out for you.
And that's the thing is, like, as a leader, you might have that trust, but that's going to take a lot of time to earn that trust, and it should take time.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't hotwire trust. You shouldn't hotwire connection. You shouldn't take that shortcut. You should earn that trust over time, by being diligent, consistent, caring, and filled with wisdom and prayer. Like those are your sort of qualifications of being literally, like, just submit to the Lord, know your scripture, teach your people well, care for your sheep. It's that service first attitude that will earn you that trust. But it's going to take time.
Yeah. And when we look at these S tier, honestly, I'm just piecing this together as we're talking about them. When we look at this S tier, a lot of them, it's almost like they're trying to get that respect and that trust from their people immediately.
Yeah.
But almost like, you said, hot wiring it.
Yeah.
And they're just not willing to put in the work to.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like as soon as somebody like feels like they're trying to hotwire something that's not there.
Yeah.
That's when you got to be worried.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like supernatural things can't happen. One of my closest friends, another one of our, Juliet, your wife.
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about that. So Colin's wife, the first honest time that I had a conversation with her, I had actually had that in a dream.
Which is wild.
About 3 months prior.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had it was short. It was about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I remember that dream, and I woke up and I was like, wow, that was weirdly vivid.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 3 months before I had ever met Juliet or gone on a thing or anything like that.
Yeah.
and I just thought it was a weird, vivid dream that kind of stuck with me for the next week.
Not sure if anything would happen from it, but it was
Yeah,
there.
well, I didn't think it was anything.
Yeah.
I didn't get dreams. I didn't get dreams.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it ended up happening, and I was like, okay, that is the darndest thing.
Wow.
I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say that. I literally, like, I freaked out.
Yeah. You didn't know what to do
happened.
with it. Stunned.
What am I supposed to do? Like, that was the first time something in my life had happened like that, and I ended up just freaking out, being really confused but excited.
Mm-hmm.
And Julia ended up being one of my closest friends, but that took years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that took actual years. That took commitment on her part, commitment on my part, commitment on my wife's part, too, because, like, she's a close friend of us.
Both of you, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like even when supernatural things happen,
It still takes time.
you still cannot hotwire connection and loyalty.
Absolutely.
Like, I didn't look at Juliet and say, "The Lord has foreordained us to be good friends. You are now my best friend." Like, I
That
didn't
would have
do
been
that.
weird.
And that would have been abusing the spiritual moment for my own.
Yeah, your own
Expediency.
Gain, your own, rush.
Like, you can't. Rushing that level of connection and trust does a dishonor to trust that is earned over time.
Yeah.
And so if you're in any level of community that's trying to hotwire trust, closeness, authority, that's a red flag.
It's a red flag.
Like,
And you see that we have two others on the S tier list that are false second coming, but also singular source of truth. And I think you see that a lot, especially in the singular source of truth as well.
yeah, 100%. And that singular source of truth, that's not only a sign of like a cult or well, that's not the sign of like a toxic religious system or a bad house church. That's a sign of a cult.
Yeah.
Like 100%. If you have a singular source of truth, one person has the correct interpretation, one person has the keys to the kingdom, or one person has the current truth,
And we put all our trust in them.
and we don't do anything of ourselves except submit to them.
Yep.
That's a cult.
That's a cult.
Yep.
Big red flag.
100%. That's a huge red flag. Like, even Jesus Christ, the Son of God, had 12 apostles that also had authority and truth from the Father. And then when the Spirit came and all people of the world were re-inherited, like, then suddenly you had trustworthy people filled with wisdom and the Spirit from everywhere.
All over.
Yeah. It was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is really cool, having the priest class sort of disintegrated along the greater population. This is awesome. This is a sign of a good thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, amen, dude. That's the new covenant. Praise God.
Looks a little bit different than just one person with all the truth.
Yeah. So that's,
Yeah. Leave that one there.
so those are the big ones. There's not a ton of debatability with some of those.
No. I mean,
maybe with the Freemasons and Catholics. And I get that. I'm not Freemason or Catholic, and if you are, and I just offended you, sorry, but do some research about your organization before you come at me, and then you can come at me in the comments or something.
Yeah,
or
reach out.
whatever. That's fine. Those are the ones that are a little bit less debatable, and then
the singular, not the singular, sorry, my bad. The false second coming, though, you mentioned earlier, though, like, if Jesus ever does come, or the second coming of Christ ever does happen, like, is there any gray area there? But I mean, a lot of these current ones, let's talk about it, because I think it's worth at least explaining.
all right.
Because I know that's going to be the first question somebody has, is like, they're
What
going to be
I-
like, what happens if Jesus is
What
back,
actually,
though?
if he does come,
Exactly.
if he does come,
That's what's going to trap people.
he's gonna have to fulfill a few prophecies. And number one, that he will be descending from the clouds, fire, and so here's the other thing. There were a multitude of Christs that were popping up in the early church, and Paul wrote against antichrists or false Christs,
Mm-hmm.
telling them, like, do they testify of the Son? Do they testify of the deity of God? Like, all of those sort of markers. And so there are some markers there that Paul specifically used for people who claim deity. in the stages of the early church, and then obviously we've got there's some level of debatability with Revelation, and the redemption of Earth and the transformation into the new Earth.
Yeah.
What does that practically look like?
We can't really answer that right now.
Yeah, there's a high degree of uncertainty surrounding different interpretations of the Book of Revelation and different end times prophecies.
Absolutely.
What I will tell you is when the Son of God appears again and the earth is entering its final stage, that sort of transitionary period into the new earth and the new Jerusalem. Actually, I was thinking about this. You know, the dimensions of the new Jerusalem, like the giant cube thing?
Yeah, that's mentioned in, I think it's in Isaiah, I think.
I don't know.
Maybe.
But, like, it's in Revelation.
Okay.
Like that weird giant cube.
Yeah, I know the
new
one you're talking about in
okay.
Revelation.
I don't
yeah.
know if it's in Isaiah too.
Okay.
I heard a scientist on a podcast talking about that. Like, he's like, that's an impossible shape. Gravity would break that down. And you're telling me that you can take this, this new world is going to be at least operating by our laws of physics? That's impossible. I thought that was like the weirdest thing to say. Is like, we'll have at the very least, you can't take that literally, or
metaphorically,
or the laws of physics fundamentally are going to change into the New Jerusalem. I was like, man, like only a nerd would think that.
Like, go to that effort.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe you can take it literally if the laws of physics change. I just thought that was so funny. I thought it was really insightful.
Yeah.
Like, I thought, like, wow, that guy's really smart. But yeah, I thought that was kind of nerdy too.
Fair enough.
I was just thinking about like Second Coming stuff, and that's where it got me. I know when the Son of Man appears, though, it will be undeniable. And the Antichrist will be one that will try to get you to bend knee to something that's not love and God and justice and honor.
Yeah,
that's a good
point. Yeah.
Standing firm against untruth. There are plenty of times that the disciples doubted Jesus.
Yeah.
And he was faithful and patient to prove himself to them.
Time and time again, he was
time and time
again.
It.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying like you have to, even if the Son of Man does appear a second time and you miss it the first time, what, you think he's just gonna like leave you in the dust? If you ask like, Lord, can you prove it to me
that this is you,
you that I already know. I have put my faith in you, and I just need a little bit of help. Like, he has been so gracious with humanity from the outset.
Of course he would. Yeah. Hard to think he wouldn't.
Like, that's so against the character of God.
No, that's a good point.
So that's my thing that I normally say to people when they're like, what if we miss him?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Forrest Gump quote where Lieutenant Dan goes, "Have you found Jesus?" Forrest goes, "I didn't know I was supposed to be looking." That's just
a great quote.
Funny. It's like, what if you miss him? Well, he was through town, but I guess he's gone now, and there's no second chance. It's like, that's not the God of the Bible, man. Like,
no, not at all. So that's S tier.
Yeah, so that was a little bit longer than I anticipated S tier taking.
It was worth it, though, I think.
You think so?
I think
so. I'll take that. I appreciate that. Maybe it's just blowing smoke, but
no, I really do think it was worthwhile.
Okay. Let's get into some of the other gray areas. We've got A tier, no questions allowed. So we've got no questions allowed in your church. That's the red flag. Why is that a red flag?
I would say it's a red flag because how can you? I mean, it allows for an environment where you either have to get on board or get out.
Otherwise known as honor culture or celebrity culture. This is also a huge problem within the institutionalized church. When you're not allowed to question people because their level of celebrity or honor, that's how you get situations that have arisen recently. With
where abuse and things are hidden, because how could they ever possibly take advantage of these people that are under them?
That's how you get like the Mars Hill allegations. That's how you get the IHOP stuff. That's how you get the Ravi Zacharias. Like all these huge celebrity culture, honor the man, honor the position, honor that. Don't question him.
Think about all that he's done for. Yep.
Yeah, and you're gonna tell me that you got problems with house church?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
that's a little aggressive, but that's my hot take for today. And I want to talk about that more in the next episode about accountability. While we're on that, I want to talk about accountability because I think it's easier in a house church than it is in the institutionalized church. And celebrity culture, honor culture, and this no questions allowed thing, that's why. Because that happens in the institutionalized church. That's actually one of my most I'm going off right now.
Keep going.
That's actually one of my most common criticisms of the house church, of the institutionalized church model. And why I get like a little bit frustrated with the current status quo. In case you didn't know that about me.
You do now? That's also why you work so hard on developing a culture of feedback. The one we talked about in our last episode. If we don't have feedback, then how can we ever be allowed to ask these questions to face
how can we get that group edification? Like, how can we expect to grow together? And so like, I get people don't want to criticize pastors outside of their sermons. I get that. Like, you don't want to talk about the guy behind his back. You want to give him a chance to defend himself, or you want to give him a chance to not even defend himself, just say like, oh yeah, thank you. Like, yeah, maybe I was wrong. Like, give him a chance to get honor in that, or like have that conversation or whatever. People don't want to criticize pastors. I'm cool with that. I'm saying it's a problem. Maybe not even. Just think how beneficial it would be if you could just stand up while he's teaching and ask him a question. Or let's say you're a member of the church and you know more than the pastor.
Help fill in a gap where other people might be lost.
Yeah. And you can just say like, no, pastor, actually I can help with that.
Yeah.
Or actually, this is what my PhD is on.
So
you're kind of wrong about this.
Yeah, let me kind of explain what's going on here. Yeah.
Like, one, that would so breed a culture of humility.
Everywhere, all across the board.
And you can tell me all day that all men are equal in your church, but you put one guy up on stage and he gets this floor for 30 minutes and nobody else can talk.
There's a separation.
All people are not equal in your church. No, there's no equality there. Or it's a false equality.
A facade.
Yeah, and so like that's my most common criticism. Like, what if you could? And a lot of people are saying like, well, I can talk to him later. He's accessible. I'm not saying he's not accessible. I'm saying your sermons aren't as edifying as they could be when you can't ask questions or add color or stop them. And part of that too is we have to we revolve the institutionalized culture around the Sunday service, and if we can just get away from that Sunday service, then I think everything would be better. And that's why we're doing the Why House Church podcast. But the example I wanted to talk about is I did one of my shortest teachings ever.
Hour and 10 minutes.
Hour and 10 minutes. One of my shortest teachings ever. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
If you think that's long.
Yeah. I normally average about an hour 30.
Yeah.
If I do a teaching, we go for about an hour 30. I've gone as long as 2.5.
Yeah, 2:38, I think is what the recording was.
Oh yeah, so we're rounding up to 3. I always joke. We only got 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I started doing that around minute 10, in like an hour and 20 minutes.
Keep going.
But a lot of the lecture though, I encourage
questions.
I love when the church engages.
Yeah.
And if it's a bad question, we're so good at receiving feedback. I'll just tell you that's a bad question. We should talk about that later. Or you're getting off topic, or that's a red herring. We don't need to ask that question.
That'll lead you down a path that's a waste of time.
Yeah. Like, and I'll get questions like that, and I'll just give short feedback like that. And because there's a culture of humility sort of permeating all of our collective pursuit towards the truth, towards good doctrine, towards good belief, it's not a problem.
Not a problem at all.
It's not a problem. Stop me, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And if we're both wrong, then we can come out of this edified.
Let's figure this out together and get to an answer.
Yeah. And see, that's the problem is so many churches, so many leaders, so many disciplers will say 100%. Like they'll just say yes and amen,
and leave it at that, and then walk away.
but they won't change their church structure. They won't change their church structure. They won't change their church culture, their sermon culture, any of that. I'm saying that
when there's more on the table to have,
that's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's not enough. So, no questions allowed. I totally threw institutionalized churches under the bus. That does happen in the house church model. And what that can look like too is kind of a pseudo honor culture.
Where we kind of elevate the older members of the house church or even the overseers, elders, in a way where we put them on a pedestal and kind of assume that they'll take the lead, they'll take the floor in kind of answering for us, where we can sit back. Doesn't mean we don't fully, like, sometimes I would say you would see it where members will still talk, they'll still share, but they will hold back on anything worthwhile of speaking into others' lives specifically too. Like speaking for the Lord, like they will just hold back and let someone else do it.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So it's like only, and I've seen that happen in our church in the early stages. Yeah. It was like only the elder was allowed to ask somebody questions.
Yeah.
It's like your relationship was between you and the elder and God.
Exactly.
And not the other members of
not
the
the
church.
other members.
I remember that season in our lives. Yeah. So our church absolutely was guilty of that. 100%, and we had to pray about that. We had to repent. We had to figure some things out culturally, and we had to have some conversations with our church
as a whole church and work together on as a whole church.
Yeah, and 100%. And so that's where we get into some of these red flags. Like they don't mean you have to leave.
No.
Well, you don't just have to pack your bags up and leave. You can say like, "Hey guys, maybe this is a problem."
It also doesn't mean once you see this red flag that it's going to end up into a cult or whatever it may be. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to end up poorly. You know what I mean? Like you can change these things and you can be a part of that change.
Yeah, especially when everybody is equal in the eyes of God. Like everybody has no favorites in the eyes of God, and that's something that I love about the equalizing, like the lunch table.
Yeah.
Or the dinner table. Everybody eats the same meal. Everybody has the same Savior. Everybody has the same Spirit.
Yeah.
There is possibility for collective change because of that.
Yes.
And that malleability, just because there is a red flag, doesn't mean it can't change, but it takes courage.
Yeah.
And it takes somebody speaking up. And so if you go to a church and there is a red flag, what is your responsibility in the situation?
It's a great question to ask.
And so the most common responsibility in the New Testament is the responsibility of speaking up, of speaking for the Lord, of spreading the gospel, of loving people, but giving them the truth.
And then after that, you kind of go from there.
Yeah, it's you put their responsibility on them, their decision between them and the Lord, like them.
How they will respond and what they will do with it.
You make that their problem. Your problem was to speak up, to be courageous, to say the truth of the Lord, to give them a chance to respond to the Lord.
Yeah.
Or to respond to Scripture, or to respond to correction. And with that responsibility, they're demonstrating their character.
Yeah.
Don't judge their character prematurely.
No.
Without speaking up. Like that's the other big thing.
Because they have the opportunity and chance to repent and turn. And
so, like, we'll get people with complaints about their leaders in their house church, and they want to come join our house church.
We have, yeah.
Have you told them their complaints? Have you confronted them?
Have you talked about it? Yeah, with your church, with that person? Like,
because if you complain and then you get thrown out of the church because of honor culture, cool. You know what?
Left them without an excuse, at least.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, then we can talk and like, you know what? Yeah, there might be a place for our church, but if you just decided you didn't like them, and you didn't you didn't even tell anybody in the church without saying anything, without giving them a chance to change,
it's not good. Not good.
That's
a red flag.
That's a red flag.
Yeah,
that's a red flag.
So that's no questions allowed. We have some other ones on the A tier list.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we got a lot of. I want to talk about isolation from family next.
Let's do it.
Because this can also get misconstrued, like the no questions allowed one.
Okay.
So the isolation from family, that's something that a lot of cults do to sort of alienate and fearmonger the outside world.
Okay. Keep them kind of separated from the world. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. They say your only safety is in our organization. Your attachments to the outside world are unhealthy for you.
Yeah.
The term that floats around in Scientology.
Yeah.
I like learning about Scientology. I like reading about Scientology. I think it's super dangerous, but it's such a uniquely American religion.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, the terminology that they throw around is suppressive persons, and so they're suppressing your ability to achieve the next level.
Got it.
And so if you have suppressive persons in your life, you are encouraged to cut them off in order to continue pursuing, what do they call it? The road, the path. I forget. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
They're a series of classes.
Levels that you can kind of get to.
Yeah. To operating theta and whatever. Yeah.
I saw a video actually of somebody at one of the California institutes of where they were at, and one of the members actually came out, and there was a camera crew outside that was doing like a reporting piece on it, and like someone came and followed him and made sure he didn't talk to, because he was just going to walk over and talk to him, and they're like, no, these are
those are suppressive persons.
These are suppressive people. Yeah,
you can't talk
literally
to
ushered them away.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay,
it's crazy controlling.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is trying to control your reaching out to your family, that's a problem. But I want to color that, because
there's some gray area.
Well, there is and there isn't.
Okay.
There's a lot of false accusations that are unfair.
Like what?
So if somebody sits there and says like, "Hey, your relationship with your sister is unhealthy," like,
is that immediately a red flag?
Exactly, and it's not.
Yeah.
Because it might be. She might just be manipulating you into giving her $400 every month.
And maybe they're looking out for you here.
Looking out for you here.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we need to have a conversation about developing boundaries and having positive relationships that can be more meaningful and productive for both people involved.
And that would reconcile us back together to the Lord instead of just bickering and fighting and leaving it.
And so that's the key is this moving towards reconciliation, or is it moving towards separation?
Yeah.
And so is the hope for reconciliation and unity with love and boundaries and relationships that honor God, or is it for isolation and control? Mm-hmm. And in the example of Scientology, it's for isolation and control.
Yeah. In
the example of, you need to stop giving your sister money for Zens or cigarettes for...
Your un-Gen Z people out there.
Zens are getting expensive. I don't use Zens. I just noticed it. Everybody's complaining about it on social media right now. Okay. In case you're wondering. Anyway, they might just be looking out for you, and you might really benefit from you and your sister having a conversation about boundaries that says, I am not going to give you money unless I see these behaviors from you.
Yeah.
Because I care about you and I want you to be independent and healthy.
Yeah.
Like, if you get to that conversation, that can have your sister, she's going to grow. That can have you feel a little bit better about the boundaries that you set. Feel better about giving money. I'm not even saying stop giving money. I'm just saying set some boundaries for what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give money to church members a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, really commonly. You
Pretty
know,
often.
like that's what I do. But like the boundaries, I set boundaries even with church members. Like, if I give you this money, this is what I'm going to need to see.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is what it goes for. This is what it's used for. You know, and we have like a really good collective mindset surrounding finances.
Yeah, I would say we've talked about it. It's something that we're not afraid to address and work on.
Absolutely. But so when we're setting boundaries with family members, the intention is to move towards unity, trust, and reconciliation more than it ever is about isolation.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
That's the key.
Like that's the big thing that I want to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about unhealthy relationships with friends or family, like there also might be friends that only really want to hang out with you because you drink.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying, hey, maybe those aren't healthy people to be around, I'm not saying stop hanging out with them. I'm saying try doing something else with them and see if they still want to be your friend.
See if they're worthwhile to still stick with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so if somebody starts talking like, hey, maybe that relationship is unhealthy, maybe they're just outside the situation. If they can explain
and give you a different perspective,
if they have evidence to their claim, hear them out.
Yeah. And that could make a world of difference.
100%. And so that's the common thing about isolation of family is I think that one gets accusatory too often. It's like, you're just trying to isolate me from outsiders.
And it's like, no, I'm trying to give you good feedback for you to potentially grow with your family member as well.
I just want you to be healthier.
Yeah.
Like I want your family to be healthier.
Yeah. But it can also be a very clear red flag as well, if it is truly isolation from family.
Yeah, yeah. And so if they're just trying to tell you that you don't need them because you have that here, instead of, no, you should reconcile with them, you should get healthier with them, and then bring your mom into the church. Like that's the most common example is like,
that's a good example.
Why didn't your mom just join the church?
Yeah.
Like if she's so worried about it, just
come on in.
Yeah, why not?
Check it out.
If they're saying you don't need your mom because you have us, that's different. That's a red flag. If they're saying, let's fix your relationship with your mom and then get you both in the church, that's not a red flag.
No.
That's
healthy behavior.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, depending on how it goes.
Yep.
But that's why wisdom, allowing things to be worked through slowly, it's important.
Very important. So that's isolation from family and no questions allowed on the A tier list. 2 left.
Let's wrap them into one.
Okay. They tie together well.
Yeah.
We got extra biblical texts as well as low view of biblical authority. And I think really the low view of biblical authority should probably be the first one we talk about here.
Yeah, because that's the first question that I get asked most commonly when I tell people I do house church.
What do you think of the Bible?
So do you guys believe in the Bible? Like, do you guys? It's usually couched in some. A lot of people like try to ask me questions without just coming right out and asking me the questions. Okay. They don't want to offend me, which I get that.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Whatever. So like, do you use the Bible? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want me to expand on that?
Yeah. So as soon as somebody starts to kind of pull away from the Bible or start to lower the view of biblical authority, that's a huge red flag. And so the only color that I would add into that, like if somebody's gonna come at you and say, well, that's an old book, it was written to people who are dead and gone now, it's.
It was?
It is. It is. It's 100% an old book, and to me, that is so important, but also encouraging.
Yeah.
Like this is a God above time.
Not something we should discount it for.
No, not at all. Like this is people are people, and God's church has been God's church from the outset. Mm-hmm. God's people have been the conduit of blessing to the world. That was the original intention. Like that was there from day one. That's there today.
Mm-hmm. So beyond just, let's say, they use that as a way to try to lower the authority of the Bible or the representation of it, what are some ways that people do that you are actually concerned about? Instead of one like that, what are some ways that you actually are worried about people trying to lower the authority of the Bible?
What do you mean? Like that is the way. Like as soon as somebody doesn't have clear criticisms,
that's your
As soon as they're just trying to lower the authority of the Bible, that's when they're communicating to me, I'm just gonna do whatever I really want to do.
Anyways,
got it. And I'm gonna use the Bible excuse, like,
mm-hmm.
Oh, it's an old book. Oh, you know what? Maybe they didn't really know what they were talking about. Oh, you know what? That's the human lens for interacting. Yada yada yada.
And right away, you're like, yeah, no.
and right away, I'm starting to say like, okay, so you're gonna tell me that you're gonna do whatever you want to do,
And then I'll
and
use
not
it when
submit to
it.
God, and then
I'll use it when it agrees with me. Yeah.
hope everything's just gonna be okay. It's that same thing we talked about deconstructing.
Yes. Yep.
It's that same thing. I'm actually just gonna do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And then hope everything works out at the end. Like,
Yeah.
and so that's something. Leighton Flowers quotes somebody with it, but I don't remember who. He says some arguments don't need to be refuted; they just need to be clearly explained.
Ah.
That's not Leighton.
That's not Leighton, but that was somebody he quoted.
He quotes, and he
Okay.
uses that all the time. It's like you don't need to refute them. You just need to clearly state their position. And as soon as they get to that point of I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm just going to hope everything's going to be okay in the end.
And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was talking to this one guy who had an experience with LSD, and that was basically what we got to. I'm like, so you're not going to submit to the Bible or the church or anything like that? Like, he's like, no, I think everything's just going to be okay in the end if I keep living the way I am.
Yeah.
And like as soon as we got to that, I'm like, cool, okay, so we're not on the same team.
This isn't for. Yeah. This isn't the same.
Yeah, and it was like after that, I was like, yeah, I don't even know like how to refute that.
Yeah.
Because
What is there to say to that?
what do you say to that? It's like, oh, cool. You're not Christian. And it's like, well, no, but I believe in some Christian principles. Okay, just don't claim the name of Christ, and
Please, yeah,
we're cool.
Yeah. As long as you don't, we're good.
But even if you do, that's between you and.
Yep.
Anyway,
All right.
that's the number. I would say that's the kryptonite to low view of biblical authority. Is just get them to clearly explain their stance.
Their actual stance, and then you don't even need to refute it.
Yeah, because if somebody can clearly articulate that, if you can get them to nail down, you can see is this a good thing or a bad thing. Because sometimes it can be a good thing. Sometimes if somebody says, I don't know about the KJV, because they actually use the Latin Vulgate, which uses a little bit altered Hebrew Old Testament that was altered in the 2nd century to lower the deity of Christ by the Pharisees who were pushing back against the use of the Septuagint.
Okay. Then you can all of a sudden look at it through a different lens and say, well, maybe this is actually
Maybe that's a legitimate criticism.
a good, worthwhile thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As soon as they start talking about that, because that's something that I'm thinking about lately.
The translations or
The Vulgate and the Septuagint.
Got it. Okay.
And so, like, if you know what the Vulgate and the Septuagint are, you're probably doing your research.
All right.
And we can probably have a good conversation about it. And if you talk to somebody and they start talking about that and you say you have a low view of biblical authority, you're the problem. If you don't want to hear criticisms of your scripture, like if you don't want to hear criticisms, you're the problem. Stop, ask yourself why. Follow out those fears or they control you.
Yeah.
That's my...
Don't want to be ruled by those fears.
That's my mic drop.
All right.
Extra biblical text. Oh, man, we are cooking.
Yes. Back to back.
Extra biblical text. So what do I mean by this? I'm okay. So I
If
called
you had
out
one example of
called out. You guys, if you had
if you want an example
I
of
called
somebody.
out Freemasonry. I called out Catholics.
Give us one more example of somebody that has an extra biblical text that you feel is not worthwhile or hurtful to
The pearl of great price.
Okay.
From the Mormons. Oh, so we're against the Freemasons, Catholics, and the Mormons today.
Welcome to White House Church.
Here's my thing, though, about Catholicism. I believe that there are a lot of faithful Catholic believers who are doing their best to pursue God and love God within the framework of the Catholic faith.
Yeah, and have a meaningful, important relationship with the Lord.
With God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and accept the sacrifice of Jesus and just don't know the teachings and the history of the Catholic Church.
Yes. Yeah, it's a completely different institutional problem, not the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't feel that way about Mormons.
All right, let's hear
think
why.
I think they worship a different Jesus.
Okay.
And
do you think
they
that
had another testament of Jesus Christ?
I was about to ask,
Uh,
is that kind of what really does it for you?
yeah,
That
that's
extra
what really
biblical?
does it, man.
Mhm.
Like, you got one guy who's a singular source of truth for a New Testament of Jesus Christ, and that does not send up a red flag. And then you've got inconsistent teachings on Black Americans. You've got inconsistent teachings on polygamy.
Yeah.
That's a huge split right now. The polygamist movement, the fundamentalist movement within um, Mormonism right now, because the fundamentalists are trying to get back to the roots of their religion,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're kind of right.
Yeah. And it's causing some strife within the
because the modern church doesn't know what to do with it. But
no, that's a different topic. That's a different topic.
So the Pearl of Great Price is a sort of accompanying text that's supposed to add doctrines and beliefs to, or they actually have another. It's like covenants and doctrines.
Okay, covenants
Doctrines
and
and
doctrines
covenants.
of
I
their
forget it.
faith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so they've got a few extra biblical texts in addition to the like the New Testament, the Book of Mormon proper, that add to the biblical canon.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem with these is, are they used on the same caliber as Scripture? Are they as authoritative as Scripture?
And from my knowledge, that the
They
Mormon
would say
Church
that they
does.
are.
They
Yes,
use
they
them
would say
as
that they are.
such.
And so that's the issue, is they would hold them to that same level of Scripture, but even more so they do because that's the most recent word that God had to their people.
And they hold it almost even a little higher.
Yeah, and so when we talk about the New Testament, we read letters between Paul and the churches.
Mm-hmm.
We read testaments of Jesus Christ that were written to those early church members.
Yeah.
We understand that the Bible was not written, it wasn't written to Luke and Colin.
No, not of this century.
So when we're reading that text, we have that understanding. But when you have that extra biblical text, sometimes that they'll say, this was written to you.
Yeah.
And then it takes on a whole new level because it's like, well, that was the early church, and now this is the new church.
This is us.
This is us. They're referring to us. That's a red flag because it lowers the authority of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead.
Yeah.
And additionally, we have now an extra biblical text that is influencing the members to think and act and believe a whole new type of, honestly, faith belief viewpoint.
Yeah, like potentially heretic, like
to the doctrine. Yeah.
like actual heresy.
Yeah.
And I'm not just being like a heretic hunter.
But with the extra biblical text, we lower, like you said, we lower the original and raise up the new. And
Yeah.
that's an issue.
That's the problem with the extra biblical text is you're then taking the low view of biblical authority. Where this can get into a false accusation is when we use outside sources to inform our. I'm gonna sound like Dr. Michael Heiser, and this language is his.
It is.
I don't know. I think he's done a lot of good work for the kingdom
Yep.
in disseminating information to the layperson, and
Excellent.
I think he should be honored for that.
Excellent job.
Yeah. So I think when you use outside resources to inform the biblical worldview of the writers,
Mm-hmm. That current time, that current culture.
yes, yeah, and when you're using it to inform their cultural beliefs, that's an okay thing
For our understanding, yeah.
for our understanding, because our cultural worldview has a belief, has a sort of imported belief system into the way that we read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a cultural worldview that changes the way that they would interpret something.
Yeah.
And if you read the Bible without that, you could get confused.
Easily, yeah.
And if you read the Bible with extra biblical text to kind of explain some things, like, I don't know, the book of Enoch and then Genesis 6, that's the easy.
2 examples real quick.
That's like the easiest example. Like
Mhm.
using the book of Enoch to inform the worldview of Genesis 6.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Enoch is canon, but using the book of Enoch to inform Genesis 6 can help to understand what they were trying to get across with the language of Genesis 6. And so if you're using that to understand the words of the Bible that really don't have a whole lot of outside use or resource,
That makes a ton of difference, and that is not nearly as worrisome or dangerous.
No, that's productive. That's good biblical study.
Absolutely.
That's good exegesis too, because
You're still holding the scripture to its intended use and purpose.
yeah. Well, you're trying to find the intended use to a more specific and to a more thorough degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's honorable. And if you have a problem with people trying to find the intended use of the scripture,
That's a you problem.
that's a you problem. Like if you're like, oh, what does it matter what the authors meant when they wrote that? Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Stop.
I think it may have been Dr. Michael Heiser that said, if it's hard and worthwhile to study, then that's a good thing. Like that's like if it
That's a
takes
good
you
sign.
extra time to think and figure it out, then it's still a good thing. You shouldn't just take the easy way out when it gets hard.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's our big one.
Yeah.
Those are our big ones. Now it's all downhill.
From here.
Yeah. So we should be able to wrap this up pretty quick. I know I got 15 minutes left. Can we reset that timer? I was just kidding.
That was good.
Yeah, thank you.
That was good.
Something like that. Sorry, that was funny. So we've got a few other red flags, problems that we see in churches.
These are not as big of, I would say, a worrisome deal for bigger structural issues. However, they still are powerful and still can mislead.
I also
quickly.
I think that they're easier to fix.
Yes, that's a good point.
I think they're easier to fix. I think the S tier, that's a problem.
Yep.
A tier is where you really get into some of the nitty-gritty of difficult things in church culture to address and adjust.
And it can be ingrained long amounts of time.
Yeah, the A tier problems are difficult, and that's why we put them in A tier.
Yes.
And we've got B tier problems now, and they're easier to fix, but there's still problems that can be bad for your church.
Can turn a church quickly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you see this coming up, your responsibility is not to fix it, but it's to say something.
Yep.
And so we've got a few, we got a list, but it should be pretty easy to talk about. We've got fiscal monarchy coming up first.
Okay, so fiscal monarchy.
Yeah, if you're elder, overseer, pastor, whatever language you want to use, we use the language of overseer.
Yep.
We'll probably do an episode on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should.
I think it would be worthwhile for everyone to understand why we chose that.
Yeah, because there was study.
Study and conversation with the church. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Anyways,
so if your overseer says you're not responsible enough with your money, I should take over your money. If they do that and you're actually not responsible, and it's a super helpful thing to teach you maturity and budgeting, I can't tell you how many members of the church that my wife has budgeted with.
Yep.
She gives me an allowance. Not really. Not
it's a
really.
running joke.
But she's honestly, like, she's good with budgets. She's good with Excel sheets. You're good with Excel sheets.
I am. It's one of my jobs.
I'm not good with Excel sheets. Like if that can be a productive thing to teach you independence, good fiscal responsibility, because when you enter into a church, your responsibility is not just to yourself, it is to God and your church.
Yeah.
And if you are wasting your money, that's a problem for the church.
But also the church.
And you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All together.
So,
but when we talk about it, we're talking about setting it up for you to be successful and for you to understand, learn, and then do it yourself.
Yeah.
And then be able to help others as well, even after. Like,
yeah, but if your pastor of a 10-person house church says that you need to give 20% of your income to me and sets up a private account to do his own thing with no say whatsoever,
and no insight into what's going on or anything of that matter with that money,
that's weird.
That's odd.
That's a red flag. If your pastor says you shouldn't spend your money, I should spend your money, and if you need something, you can ask me, that's a huge red flag. That's like a cult level red flag.
Yeah.
That is not a good thing. Keep rolling.
All right, no criticism. I think it ties into a lot of what we talked about with no question is like allowed.
100%, like that honor culture and stuff like that. I would say with the no criticism,
Uh-huh.
a lot of people can say, "Oh, they don't accept criticism." Have you tried? Have you tried? Because if you criticize them and you do it with love, and then they explode and blow up at you, that's fine. That's on them.
Yeah, that's not
But
on
let
you.
it be on them. Don't say, oh, they're bad at accepting criticism when you don't even give them any.
Give them a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, we've taken a long time to set up a good culture of allowing feedback, particularly criticism.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's too sharp, but then we just criticize the criticism.
And then we figure it out. I mean, you ask every single time after you teach for criticisms, like for feedback, but also like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Do you disagree? Let me know.
Yeah, because if I'm wrong, it's a problem for you and for me.
And then we both walk away wrong instead of figuring this out together.
Yeah. And so then we've got fear-mongering, too. That's the next red flag. That's when we're talking about things like
Us versus them, controlling the outside.
yeah, controlling your outside information and pushing a certain narrative about how things are so terrible on the outside. Like, oh, once you leave our house church, things are just going to be horrible for you. Maybe. Maybe not.
But not as much as you might be making it out to be.
Yeah.
So-
And so if people are pushing a lot of fears surrounding outside organizations, that's a red flag. They might just be wrong. It might be well intentioned.
It could be. I mean, the world does have a lot of bad things and scary things, but
Yeah.
is it as much as a group may be making it out to be?
Well, and too, I would ask, like, when we're fear mongering, when you're trying to elevate the level of fear, why are you doing so? Why are you elevating fear when we should be elevating courage?
And especially within the house church, seeing love cast out all fear.
Yeah,
And if we are followers of Christ and we are encouraging fear over love,
that's not good. You need to stand up for love, stand up for the oppressed, the widow, the orphan. Stand up for these people who need it, because that's your mandate.
absolutely,
Like, that's your
is.
mission as a Christian,
who
is
claims
to
the name of Christ. Yeah.
spread the gospel of Christ and care for the orphan and the widow, to stand up for justice,
Mm-hmm.
and to not be afraid of even death.
In the face of it. Mm-hmm.
And when you're fear mongering, one, you're giving power to the enemy, but two, it's just going to create a toxic culture of insulation. I think is really the other problem. Like, besides the Christianity, that's
the issue.
and
Yeah.
that's what you see honestly within political camps.
That's a good point. Yeah. They use fear as a tactic to control and get everybody on the same page and even inform. They use fear as an information.
They get that to insulate their camps
Yeah.
from outside perspectives and outside opinions. And once you do that,
It's hard to penetrate.
yeah.
All right.
Yep. Okay, I used this word earlier, I think.
You did. Love bombing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's talked about hot wiring. Yeah.
Connection. Mhm.
Yeah, so love bombing is when you get in and everybody like just treats you like you're the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have to earn your way into a church, but
There's a unnatural, almost overwhelming, just like love, though, that's not truly authentic to who you are as a person.
no, and it's not authentic to what things are going to be like in a year.
Yeah. In that relationship. Exactly.
And so there
Mhm.
are some things that we've done that have been a little bit drastic. Like I had a guy in our church when he was kind of getting his feet under him, faith wise, life wise, like all that stuff. I had him move in. I was
Mhm.
like, bro, just move in.
Yeah.
Like, just forget about it. Move into my house. We'll figure it out. We'll kind of use this season in your life to grow in the faith, live like I live, and then we'll see where it gets you.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, there were some concerns and criticisms from his friends, his family, stuff like that, because they were like, "You're gonna go live with a guy from your church?
That seems a little weird.
That seems a little weird," and it was a little weird.
Yeah.
But I loved him like a son.
Yeah.
I love him like a son, and the amount of growth that he experienced in that time. I love him more now. Like, we're closer now
Because of that.
because of that time.
Yeah.
I didn't like love bomb him when he first moved in.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like make him dinner every night and like, oh, this is like a sleepover every night. Like, no, like we had this intention that it was going to be a learning experience.
Throughout that time together, And because of that learning experience throughout the time together, you came away closer.
Yeah,
than
and
you
so
would've
if
been.
you're growing in unity and closeness, that's a good sign.
Mhm.
If you feel like you were closer when you were new, and now things are kind of falling away,
That might not be
that might not be such a good sign. That might be love bombing.
exactly.
Okay, then we've got no spiritual purpose, or attempts at spirituality within a meeting.
And this is really, if, like, let's say you have a group of people that want to do a Bible study or doing church together, but they don't bring up the Bible, they don't talk about God, they don't really attempt to even address spiritual things in your life,
Yeah.
they don't check on you with spiritual things in your life, then that's a red flag.
That's a social club. That's not a church.
It's not a church.
And we talked about that in episode 2, part B.
I think it was part B.
I think it was part B. I don't know.
Part 2, part B.
We recorded those on the same day, so
They kind of blend together a little bit.
it's like they're
However,
both episode 2 or something.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, more on that later.
And the last one's hot wiring connections, which we've been talking about.
Yeah, we kind of put that up at the top.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. And then we've got a little bit of a joke, a lighter tone to end the episode, because we talked about some heavy things today, and I think this went a little bit longer than
We initially expected.
than we expected it to. Oh man, we were talking like we wanted to keep episodes down to 40 minutes or so.
We're at 1:05, 1:06 now.
Can we reset that timer? Can I get 15 minutes back?
15 more minutes, please.
15 more minutes back. Yeah, so this was definitely a longer episode, but I don't regret that. I think it needed to be said and it needed to be talked about. And
I wouldn't have wanted to split it up either.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's
So
worthwhile.
we'll press on. We're short on time. We'll go over a little bit.
We have the last 3 levels.
Yeah.
C, D,
yeah.
and F. We went through S, A, and B.
yeah. So that's that's the meat of the episode.
S,
That's
A,
what
and
you
B.
need to know. The rest of these are things that we were thinking about when we were putting other, like
Items on the board.
items on the board. We were thinking like, what does it really take to be a D tier house church red flag? And so for the C tier, we actually only come up with 2.
Yep.
One was dress codes.
Those are a little weird.
Those are a little weird, but they could be God honoring.
They can be God honoring. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, for example, a lot of our church exercises beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you walk up and you're just like
Really
in
showing
a
some.
cutoff and short shorts and stuff, it's like,
Yeah.
are you really gonna wear that to the gathering?
Might not be the best thing
Is
for
is
everyone
that
to
really?
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets into like a C tier. Like, yeah, you know what? Maybe you should have a conversation, but do you need to codify it?
You do need to get it to the point where you're wearing uniforms all the time.
Yeah.
That's where no.
That's weird.
That's weird.
Like,
Yeah.
we should get matching shirts. No, stop. We actually do. A lot of the inspiration for the lower tier red flags came from our church. Like if we're looking at it,
These would be a little weird.
yeah,
From
so-
the outside perspective.
So my mom, I love my mom. She makes like France and fitness gear.
Yes.
Just because
good.
I lift. Like I don't coach.
No.
We do
Just lift in the basement.
I just lift, man. And so she makes like t-shirts for me and the whole church, and
Yep.
and so she gave me a box of red t-shirts, and you have to meet certain standards before you get a red t-shirt. That's my rule. My mom didn't make that up. I told her I was gonna gatekeep them, and she said, "Don't do that," and I did it anyway. Sorry, Mom, but I was right.
It's an honor to get the red shirt.
It's an honor to see. Exactly.
Not
You
there.
listen to that, Mom?
Not there yet. I'm almost.
People are working harder to get that red shirt. That's the purpose. That's what we need.
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
You're
All right,
welcome.
thank you. I don't know if my mom will listen to this. But everybody's got like Friends and Fitness shirts.
Yeah.
And I think that's funny because that's like almost our dress code. Like you look around the church and everybody's like,
It's such a ridiculous dress
what is
code.
that, dude? Like, you guys all go to the same gym? Well, kind of. But
Technically, yeah.
technically, yeah. But it's just this guy's
Basement, yeah.
It's like, yeah. We just opened our house to our church, and I've got probably the best home gym in the Midwest. So,
Easily.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to wear T-shirts because my mom makes them for everybody. And you know what? You're going to make my mom happy. I don't care if you like them or not, you're going to wear them. That's
That's a C tier. That's a C tier red flag.
But I explained it away, so it doesn't need to be a red flag anymore.
Yep.
Love you, Mom. All right. Isolation from other religious organizations. Like, if you just don't talk to any other house churches and you don't want to talk to any other religious organization, that is a C tier red flag. But that also can be just a problem that's easily rectified with a positive relationship. Like, we see that a lot with these house churches that have just started off. They're like, we don't have anybody to talk to.
No.
And then we give them people to talk to, and they're like, oh, we needed
It was
this.
so nice. Thank you. Thank you for connecting us with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, is that actually a red flag? Only if it's self-imposed.
And if it's,
but usually if it's self-imposed, there are a higher tier red flag accompanying it.
yeah, and typically they're trying to figure something out until they can kind of connect.
Yeah.
But
So that's the C tier. And we've got a few D tier red flags, which again, these are D tier red flags. Are they actually big deals? No.
This first one makes me laugh every single time I read it.
I don't know. I think it's funny. Abby's saying no, don't say it.
We're getting our producer saying, don't say it.
We're an hour and 10 minutes in. If they followed for this,
They deserve to hear it.
They deserve to hear it. So our D tier red flag that we came up with was at least 5 kids per married couple.
It's a little weird.
Church.
It's a little weird. You can't tell me it's not.
Yeah, and so there are certain movements within churches
That encourage.
like the Quiverful movement.
Yep.
But a lot of the problem with the Quiverful movement is you've got legions of unsupervised kids.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the sexual abuse that has come forward later. And so you've got this sort of underlying question of like, who's taking care of all these kids?
Yeah. How do they look out for how do they look out for themselves? How do they care for themselves? And especially like spiritually, like if you're leaving them for the practical pieces alone, how then can they get there also with the spiritual pieces?
Yeah. And so there are like some problems that you get with 5+ kids. I'm not saying every couple with 5+ kids does not take care of their kids. Don't miss me with that.
Yeah.
So there can be 5-kid families that are A-okay.
With excellent parents. We're not saying,
100%. But if everybody in the church, every married couple has 5+ kids, why?
And if that's a precedent that's being set and encouraged, why?
Is there some like backroom teaching about Quiverful or like the Quiverful movement, or is there some sort of higher tier honor that's bestowed upon more fertile couples because they're more favored by God? Like these are real concerns brought on by something that's kind of just weird.
That's just, silly.
Especially in 2024, but that's a different thing.
So, that's one.
Second one
is
D tier. Again, this is D tier.
D tier, almost to the bottom. Second one from the bottom. We also have age gaps between leaders and followers. We actually have seen this in an instance before with someone we've ran into where there was a leader of a Bible study church. I don't know what they were exactly, but 45, 50 years old, and then everybody else was 18, 20.
Yeah. Like
young, like 20-year gap. And there was a very clear power dynamic.
Yeah, and that power dynamic was concerning.
Yes.
Especially because it became a house church thing, which then takes it outside of the accountability that the normal structure would give it.
The normal institution has with checks and balances of
Ideally. Again, that doesn't always happen within the institution.
Exactly, but ideally.
I'm talking about ideally. And so there are checks and balances that should be there that may or may not be there. But now when they're outside of the institution, it's like, okay, there's nothing. Now, sometimes
having an older, wiser person in your gathering is worth it. And
super worth it.
Super helpful.
Can be super good.
And super beneficial.
Super. And so there are like some churches stories that have been like, one church, he was a youth group pastor. And then their families just got super close and they reconnected like 10 years later.
Yes, one on the south side.
Yeah,
yep.
No names.
Yep, one on the south side.
Like that church, that's not a red flag.
No,
it's the story of their church.
Yeah.
And so
how the
like,
relationships were built and formed.
Yeah. Does it impact their current demographic? Yes. Is it a red flag? Not really.
No.
It's a D tier red flag.
No.
Like that's why. It's because it's not super.
It's not controlling their gatherings, their interactions. No.
And so our last D tier red flag is gender proportion differences. If it's like one dude and a bunch of girls, or one girl and a bunch of dudes. That's just kind of weird to us.
A little odd.
Yeah, I don't really know what it means. I don't have a whole lot behind that. It's a D tier red flag, guys. I just think it's weird.
But also, once again, like with many of these D tier red flags, with a little bit of time and adjustments, they'll change and it'll be fine.
Maybe it'll change, or maybe it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And now we get to the F tier red flags. These are basically like
Bottom feeders.
I was thinking about like what are the only like, or what are the some of the low hanging fruit of criticisms of our church. And so the first one is fitness elitism.
If you're not working out,
yeah, this is me. There's our overseers are pound for pound the strongest people in the church, I think.
yes, they are.
Like
They are.
So by Dot's coefficient, our 3 overseers, maybe that's changed.
John may be getting close.
Yeah, John might be up there. It doesn't matter.
We'll figure it out.
we should check the church leaderboards. But the problem is, like, not only does that put me in a position of wisdom, leadership, and spiritual maturity, but then anybody who's got fitness questions too
also goes to you.
also goes to me. And so then I get to say, unless you bench press 3 plates, you can't vote on this issue.
It's true. He does say that in our gathering.
I never do that seriously.
It's
But
always a
last
joke.
time we were talking with another church, I said, how much does your church bench press collectively? Like, add them all together. What do you guys got? Blew them out of the water. 100% blew them out of the water. Our church won that. Wasn't even close.
Yep.
It's an F tier red flag. It's not an actual red flag. And it's also like the more fit members of our church do not get more honor. It just happens that a lot of the more spiritually mature members of our church are just stronger.
And from the outside, anybody that saw that would then think, oh, well, then I also have to lift and be a part of all that fitness stuff if I want to be a part of that church.
No, I think you should take care of the temple. I think you should take care of your body so as to not be a burden at any point in life. And so you can better survive any level of disturbance or challenge. Like, I think being fit is smart, but I'm a physical therapist.
It doesn't immediately disqualify you from
No,
being
it
a part
doesn't
of the
immediately
church,
qualify,
though.
and that's just my bias.
Yeah.
Like I'm the exercise guy. Like, you come to me in the clinic and you're gonna exercise. That's it.
Deadlift and
Like,
squat.
yeah. If I get like an 80-year-old osteoporotic woman, I'm thinking, yeah, we're gonna do some deadlifts.
Yep.
And so you come to my church, I'm already thinking, it'd be good for your spiritual maturity.
Deadlifts.
That's right. And so our last one, this is funny. This is actually our church. We called it ironic boomer humor.
Oh,
So,
man.
a lot of us like grew up with like these aging white comedians who all did like the "I hate my wife" gimmick, and they were like kind of like sort of that guy who wasn't afraid to be a little bit sexist and a little bit
racist
this and a little
yeah.
bit that, and like we grew up with that. It's just not funny. It's not. It's alienating, and it's it creates divides between people, and it puts people into categories, and it makes differences not good. It's sort of a promotion of homogeneity, and it celebrates sameness and judging more than it celebrates unity across boundaries.
And being okay to be different, but also still come together.
Yeah. And so like that humor is not cool beans.
So we often
Make
make
fun of it
that humor.
in parody, but it's kind of a low-key red flag when we in jest put that sort of "I hate my wife" spin on things.
Could you give us an example?
the old ball and chain, as if I'm referring to my wife that way.
Yeah.
I'll do that in jest
As a joke.
as a joke, but my wife is not a ball and chain. She's my best friend. She's my closest support system. I would die for her in an instant. I thank God for her every day.
but you're making fun of the fact that people actually do that seriously.
Because it's ridiculous to me.
Yes.
How could you hate somebody that you have lived in covenant with
that long?
Yeah, and if you do, maybe you should reconcile. Maybe you should talk about it. I don't know. Go to counseling. Like, figure it out.
Yeah. It's not something to ignore.
I love my wife. I love every minute I get to spend with my wife. And the fact that some people don't is just absurd to me. So, yeah, I'm going to parody the absurdity.
Yeah.
And is it kind of an F tier red flag when the elder of your church goes, the old ball and chain? Yeah, maybe, but...
Maybe from the outside, yeah.
It's a bit. It's a bit.
Yeah.
Boom. There it is. We've
S
got
through F.
6 tiers of red flags for you. Did it in 20 minutes. We just had to reset the timer a few times.
After an hour.
If you like our content, like, comment, subscribe, engage with us on social media. We are doing this thing. We are here. Send this to family and friends.
White House Church.
Criticize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are open to criticism.
Feedback.
WhiteHouseChurch.com. My name is Luke. This is Colin. Signing off.